In 479 BC, an explosive alliance of Greek cities prepared to face the powerful Persian army in a battle that would define the fate of all of Hellas. The plain of Plataea, in Boeotia, became the stage where the future of Greece would be played out. After the crushing naval defeat at Salamis a year earlier, the Persian king Xerxes decided to retreat to Asia, leaving behind an imposing force under command of Mardonius, a ruthless general with a clear mission: to consolidate Persian rule and, if possible, subdue the rebellious cities, with Athens as the primary objective. Although Xerxes was no longer on the battlefield, Mardonius commanded a massive army, drawn from every region of the vast Persian Empire and unexpected allies, including the infamous city of robbers, Athens' sworn enemy. His plan was simple and brutal: leverage his numerical superiority to force the Greeks into a decisive, open battle. Meanwhile, uncertainty reigned in Greece. Sparta hesitated whether to risk a direct confrontation or remain firm behind the natural defenses of the Isthmus of Corinth. However, tragedy had befallen Athens, devastated by Persian plunder, and its people clamored for ruthless revenge. When Mardonius attempted to break the Greek alliance by offering Athens land and the promise of reconstruction in exchange for abandoning Sparta, the rebellious city-state responded with a resounding no and issued a desperate call to the Spartans to join in the ultimate fight for freedom. In the end, a gigantic pan-Hellenic coalition was formed, determined to confront Mardonius in a battle that would mark history forever. According to ancient chronicles, especially those of Herodotus, the Allied army was composed of tens of thousands of light soldiers, supported by auxiliaries trained for war. Mardonius, after spending the winter in Thessaly, launched his offensive in the spring of 479 BC, advancing into Boeotia and Attica with the intention of invading the Athenian region once again. His strategy was clear: to draw the Greeks into battle, confident that they would staunchly defend their territory. Therefore, he set up camp near the infamous city of Thebes, seeking to provoke an immediate reaction. Meanwhile, the Allied forces, led by the powerful contingents of Sparta and Athens, assembled for battle. Supreme command was entrusted to Spartan regent Pausanias, a strong and calculating leader, while Aristides became the voice and inspiration of the Athenians. The choice of battlefield was no coincidence. Plataea, a city loyal to Athens, located near Mount Cithaeron, and with vital access to water sources, offered perfect terrain for the Greeks to defend themselves. In this rugged terrain, they protected themselves from a fearsome Persian cavalry, which needed open spaces to deploy. The Greeks positioned themselves on the heights, aware that their light infantry had an advantage in direct combat if they could avoid being flanked by enemy cavalry. The Persian army was an impressive and diverse force: Persian archers and spearmen, Median and Bactrian warriors, and even Greek contingents allied with the city of Thebes. The Hellenistic forces, meanwhile, brought together the powerful hoplites of Sparta, Athens, Corinth, Megara, and other allied states, organized in compact ranks, ready to crush the invader. Although the exact number remains a mystery, sources speak of over 100,000 combatants in total, combining both sides. Before the final clash, several days were devoted to sounding out and skirmishing, further straining the atmosphere in anticipation of the battle that would decide the fate of all of Greece. The fearsome Persian cavalry, under command of the bold General Mazis, unleashed a series of swift and deadly attacks against the Greek positions. Mounted archers launched arrows from a distance, attempting to break the Hellenistic formations and cut off their vital water supply. Forced to abandon the strategic mountain heights, the Greeks held firm with a relentless defense. Although the Persians controlled much of the plain, Sparta and Athens worked together to maintain the flow of water to their troops, a task that seemed almost impossible under enemy pressure. In a key skirmish, the Greeks achieved a feat that shook the Persian camp. They cut down and killed Mazis, the feared cavalry leader. The screams and wails of the Persians echoed through their ranks, while Greek morale soared, proving that even the enemy cavalry was not invincible. Meanwhile, Mardonius, aware that battle was approaching, sent emissaries to the Greek cities with promises of autonomy and rewards, attempting to break the alliance. But the coalition leaders remained steadfast and united. With each passing day, tension grew like a storm about to break. The camp was caught between two enormous forces, expectant and ready for the final clash. When night fell, The soldiers retreated to their tents or makeshift shelters, aware that any order could unleash the battle that would define their destinies. In the Greek camp, the night's calm contrasted with the subdued energy. Groups gathered around bonfires sharing stories and rituals. The Spartans were noted for their silent and fearsome discipline. Anyone walking among their ranks would see men focused, polishing their shields with the letter lambda, murmuring brief prayers to their protective gods, or singing the chants that guided them on their march. One of those warriors, an imposing Spartan, barely exchanged words with his comrades. Retreat was a foreign concept to him, having been taught since childhood that surrender was worse than death itself. The Athenians, on the other hand, displayed a different energy, vibrant and full of hope, proudly recalling their great victories at Marathon and Salamis, historic moments that fueled their courage and will to fight. The voices in the Greek camp echoed with a single message: defend the freedom of their city-states at all costs. Among them, a courageous hoplite named Eurymedon, scarred by the devastation his home in Athens suffered, swore that this battle would be the last time an invader dared to set foot on his sacred land. At the heart of the battle line stood troops from Corinth, Megara, and other regions, united in a titanic effort to maintain cohesion against the enemy. Although Sparta and Athens had long-standing feuds, the Persian threat had achieved the unthinkable, uniting them under a single banner. The Spartan regent Pausanias ensured that command was clear, and each contingent knew exactly where it should be when the moment of truth arrived. For his part, Aristides, the influential Athenian leader, did his best to contain any spark of rivalry that threatened to fracture the alliance. Meanwhile, at the luxurious Persian camp, Mardonius secluded himself in a great tent adorned with exotic fabrics and ostentatious furnishings, a reflection of the power of the vast empire. There he received the nobles of his army and representatives of the infamous city of Thebes and other allies, confident that a decisive confrontation on dry land would crush the Greek hoplites. His army was a formidable mix: archers, heavy cavalry, riders with bows, and infantry units equipped with wicker shields and short spears. But the Persian nights were tinged with mourning for the death of Moses, as blacksmiths repaired weapons and soldiers in distant lands murmured about the empire's great victories in Asia and Egypt, though not forgetting its recent setbacks. They knew that numerical superiority could be decisive, but they also feared the indomitable Greek spirit, with a dare to challenge an empire that stretched to the borders of India. Desperate to force a battle, Mardonius issued a direct challenge to Pausanias to descend onto the plain and break the Hellenistic formation before their supplies ran out. However, the rugged terrain where the Greeks were positioned limited the use of Persian cavalry and light infantry, making the battle even more uncertain. After days of skirmishes and supply difficulties, the Greek leaders decided to retreat to Plataea, a place with better water sources and favorable terrain. The plan was to make an orderly night movement, withdrawing in sections without losing their composure. But coordination failed. The Spartans delayed, perhaps because of the weight of honor that prohibited them from retreating, while Athens and Corinth began to advance prematurely. This disunity created gaps and confusion in the allied ranks. At dawn, while part of the army remained firmly in place, the rest was already marching toward Plataea. Mardonius, warned by his scouts, saw this partial withdrawal as a final rout and did not miss the opportunity. He launched his attack, determined to crush a scattered and vulnerable enemy. At first light, Mardonius gave the final order, all-out offensive. His objective was to crush the Greeks as they attempted to retreat and reorganize. The Persians advanced in relentless waves, their cavalry firing arrows and javelins, breaking the morning silence with a roar of war. Amidst the chaos, Pausanias reacted quickly and gathered the Spartans into fearsome phalanx formation near the sanctuary of Hera, while the Athenians to the east did the same, fighting against time to regroup and avoid succumbing to the enemy onslaught. For an infantryman, that moment was a storm of dust, shouts in Persian and Greek, and a confusion of scrambling for a place in frenzy. But the hoplites' relentless discipline shone through. In the Spartan line, the steady blare of trumpets set the rhythm, while spears and shields clashed with brutal force. The Persians, relying on their archers in overwhelming numbers, repeatedly crashed into a wall of bronze shields. Their light armor could make no dent in the Greeks' tight formation. The Persian spears, short and less durable, could not penetrate the hoplites' iron defenses. A hail of arrows rained down upon the Spartans, but most bounced off with dull thuds, barely wounding a few in the rear ranks. Step by step, the phalanx advanced, plunging their long spears into the enemy mass with deadly precision. The battlefield was filled with a deafening roar. Metal against metal, war cries, and the neighing of horses trying to outflank the impenetrable human wall. In one corner of the front, a Lacedaemonian veteran brought down the Persian standard-bearer, and his unit celebrated with a roar that echoed like thunder through the allied ranks. On the other side, the Athenians engaged in a fierce battle with the Boeotian contingents, allies of Persia, including the infamous city of Thebes. It was an almost fratricidal battle, with Greeks fighting Greeks, with very similar fighting styles. The Athenians deployed their hoplites, but the morale of some of the allies was weak, aware that most of the Greek world was united against them, under the command of Aristides. The Athenians fought a fierce battle. Spears broke, and swords took center stage in the hand-to-hand combat. The ground was covered in dust and blood. In the midst of the carnage, an Athenian hoplite, his stained and heavy linen corselet, thought of his family who had taken refuge in Salamis and swore that he would never allow the invader to subjugate his city again. With the arrival of decisive reinforcements, the Athenians at Plataea began to take complete control, pushing the dreaded robbers to the outskirts of the battlefield. In the center, the imposing figure of Mardonius, mounted on his horse and dressed in elaborate armor, harangued his troops in a commanding voice, shouting that Greek defeat was inevitable and that a retreat was imminent. But the Spartans' relentless pressure and the phalanx's unwavering determination began to break the Persian defense. Rumors spread among the enemy ranks that their formations were beginning to unravel. The Persian cavalry, at various times, was unable to maneuver as needed, and casualties mounted uncontrollably. In the midst of this chaos, Mardonius fell mortally wounded. Chronicles differ. Some say he was hit by a Spartan spear, others by a thrown weapon. What is clear is that his fall was a devastating blow to the morale of his soldiers. Many Persians, seeing their commander fall, fled to their fortified camp, and the vacuum command led to a complete breakdown of coordination. Without a clear leader, junior officers hesitated between regrouping or continuing to fight, and the Persian attack turned into a chaotic retreat. For the Greeks, Mardonius' death was a definitive sign that victory was within reach. The Spartans, focused and disciplined, advanced with determination, while the Persians, without guidance, began to disperse. Even the least committed allies abandoned the field, preferring to save their lives rather than die in vain. It was then that the Hellenistic coalition demonstrated its full strength and unity in the final blow. The fleeing Persians took refuge in their palisade-protected camp, but the Greeks, fueled by the adrenaline of victory, launched a fierce siege. Although the Persian resistance was tenacious, the morale gap was decisive. The wooden walls and ditches could not stop the Greek hoplites, who stormed forward. In a chaotic final stand, many Persians were trapped inside, facing certain defeat. The Greeks captured an enormous amount of booty, precious metals, exotic animals, luxurious fabrics, and provisions of every kind. The contrast between the simple life of the Hellenistic warriors and the opulence of the Persians impressed many. It is said that Pausanias visited Mardonius' tent, marveling at the wealth found there, but ordered discipline to be maintained and any excess to be curbed. Even so, in the heat of battle, there was no shortage of looting and slaughter, a common occurrence after major clashes in ancient times. With the Persian camp captured and their army in tatters, the Greek victory was sealed. The few who managed to escape fled without order or hope, unable to reorganize. The Battle of Plataea marked the end of the Persian threat to mainland Greece. The news was a relief to the Greek cities. The army left behind after the defeat at Salamis could no longer continue its plans of conquest. For the Greeks, especially Sparta and Athens, this victory was irrefutable proof of the effectiveness of the Hoplite phalanx and the strength of their alliance. Plataea joined the great symbolic victories of Marathon in 490 BC and Salamis in 480 BC. Sparta saw its prestige as a land-based military power grow, consolidating its leadership under Pausanias. Meanwhile, Athens gained a crucial respite that allowed it to rebuild its city and, soon after, lead the formation of the Delian League, on its way to become the great maritime power of the ancient world. For its part, The Persian Empire maintained its dominance in Asia, but renounced future large-scale expeditions against Greece. Xerxes' ambitious campaign ended at enormous cost, and without success, the robbers, allies of the Persians, did not escape the political consequences of their betrayal. The consequences of the battle resonated throughout Greece for years, and the treachery of the robbers was marked with a stigma that never faded. After the battle, the Greeks honored their fallen with the respect they deserved. The Spartans, true to their rigorous tradition, paid tribute to every warrior who had given his life on the battlefield. The Athenians, for their part, erected commemorative monuments and trophies, eternal symbols of their victory and sacrifice. The vast plain of Plataea was littered with wreckage. Splintered shields, scattered weapons, and bodies lying in the dust, a stark and brutal reminder of ancient warfare. Among the survivors, some soldiers wandered the countryside searching for their comrades, their faces marked by exhaustion and despair. A hard-faced Corinthian hoplite recounted how he saw an Asiatic contingent fleeing, too exhausted to be pursued. Meanwhile, a wounded Persian archer, left behind, collapsed on a tree trunk, awaiting a seemingly inevitable end. In the minds of many, there remained a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and sadness at the high price paid in lives. Pausanias, along with other Greek leaders, debated the prudence needed to avoid falling into excessive triumphalism. They knew that the union between the polites was fragile and that they often clashed with each other. But on that day, they all recognized each other as brothers who had achieved a monumental feat. The Battle of Plataea, in 479 BC, was a climax of the Second Persian invasion and the ultimate test of Greek ability to repel a vast empire. Despite internal tensions and unequal numbers, the iron discipline and indomitable courage of the hoplite phalanx, along with clever strategic defense, defeated the might and sophistication of the Persian army commanded by Mardonius. As the sun set over the plain, the last Persian resistance had disappeared, and the Greek allies were celebrating a historic victory. This triumph ushered in a golden age for Greece, fueling the cultural and political boom that would mark the following decades. Plataea was inscribed alongside Marathon and Salamis as one of the most decisive milestones in the formation of Hellenic identity. Thus, history confirmed that even against a vast and powerful empire, conviction and unity could prevail. The fate of Helles was sealed, reaffirming the freedom and pride of people who wrote one of the greatest epics of antiquity, the Persian Wars. If you're passionate about discovering the battles that changed the world and want more epic stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and press the bell. This is where history comes alive, and you're part of the adventure. See you in the next video.